happening. So let's start off with all the extensive and background work that you have going on. You have worked with robotics, artificial intelligence, and philosophy. So you have a good background. I was reading up on all the research that you've done, a little bit about your background, but why don't you start off by telling me just a little bit about what you do at Brown?
Yeah, sure. So I am the Associate Director of the Humanities-Centered Robotics Initiative at Brown University, and we are a cross-disciplinary initiative that is focused on expanding research out of just computer science and engineering in robotics to encompass other disciplines and other departments. So we look at robotics and ethics, we look at robotics and cognitive science, we look at robotics and the arts. So our goal is to really make robotics a core part of the university and involved in lots of different research disciplines, because inherently robotics is about to become something that is general purpose in the world the same way cell phones or computers are.
The way as I have my phone here, my computer here, we have the screen here, the camera here.
Soon you'll have a robot here.
That's awesome. And it's so interesting. I've been really looking forward to having this conversation with you. We've been going back and forth, like what's the best way to approach this? So many things that we have the possibility to talk about. But let's kind of look into really the development of robotics and AI, automation. Kind of talk to me about what you are looking at in terms of developments at Brown University, kind of what you have your hands on so far.
So we do a lot of work in motion planning and pick and place and letting robots see and plan their way in the natural environment. So right now, most robots are in very structured environments. They're on factory floors where everything has a very precise place and nothing ever goes out of place. To get robots out into the world, they need to be able to see things and they need to be able to predict things at a very rapid rate. And a lot of the research at Brown focuses on how do we get robots ready to be in the world, and then also on more of the ethics and control side. Once robots are in the world, how do we help them make better decisions about what to do? So there's a lot of exciting research going on, and really it's reflective of the changes that are happening in the robotic sphere. When I was in the Google self-driving car for the first time in 2011, it drove better than any human I've ever driven with. I mean, it was leaving rubber on the road. It was drifting.
And that was a while ago.
That was 2011.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
But the reason why it wasn't everywhere is because the sensor on the roof of that car, the LiDAR sensor, cost $75,000 for one car. Now, in January this year, the first solid state LiDAR, this is a rotating LiDAR, not a solid state LiDAR. The first rotating LiDAR came out for $299. And they expect a solid state LiDAR to come out sub 100 within the next year.
Oh,
so you're going from $75,000 to sub 100 for a sensor. And admittedly, you're going to need more sensors. They're not quite as accurate. There are drawbacks. But you're going to start to see things that have been in the lab make their way into general life. Things like self-driving cars, things like self-driving trucks. And that actually is going to have a big impact on employment.
Yeah, so how close do you think we are? So you just mentioned that. How close do you think we are to those steps? And then how close are we to that impacting employment? And we'll get to that step next.
So I think there was a McKinsey study that was very widely quoted that was saying that in the next 20 to 40 years, we're going to see 47% of jobs replaceable by AI or robots. But just to focus in on a specific industry that might be impacted first, truck driving is one of the most common occupations by state in the US outside of retail. And self-driving trucks have made their first delivery. They are in testing. They've run on the highway openly. But the question is, when are our policymakers going to allow that technology to actually go forth into the world and start being used? And I think that this ultimately is going to be a policy question more than a technology question. I think the technology is going to be there in the next 5 or 10 years. And then the question is, will the policymakers let it happen?
So you still think, so even though we're seeing all this stuff happen, things are pretty much ready, we still think 5 to 10 years for it to be on the road?
I think that self-driving cars, with the way policy is moving right now, may take 5 years. Self-driving trucks may take 5 years to get on the roads. Policy moves a lot slower than technology. And I think that policy is also reactive to technology, and has been burned by being reactive to technology. Like, a lot of policymakers are looking at the growth and rise of Uber, for instance, and realizing, we didn't do enough in terms of regulation during that growth. Now, some people say it's a good thing that Uber is everywhere. I personally love Uber and Lyft. I think they're very convenient. But some people point to the destruction of the taxi industry in several cities and say, this has had negative impacts as well. And I think policymakers are becoming more cautious, especially with self-driving cars, which also have a problem of liability and insurance, because you have a vehicle that is on the road without a specific agent driving it.
Yeah, that's true. Then who's the liability? Who does that fall on?
And right now it looks like it's falling on the companies and the programmers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I remember there was a crash. I went to school in Arizona, so I kind of get updates on Arizona, and there was the crash involved in that. I don't remember. I don't know if it was the Uber or it was the Google car, the driverless car, but it was the fault of a human driver. Remember, it rolled over.
Really?
The car rolled over. It was one of the driverless cars.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, so it rolled over, and it was in Tempe, Arizona, and so it flipped, and so everyone's like, oh, blah, blah. But it wasn't the driverless car's fault. It happened to be a driver hit that car, and it rolled over. So
and I personally think that driverless cars will be much safer than human drivers in the long term. We disregard the amount of people who die every year in car accidents, and it's more than a lot of diseases that we put billions towards treating. And I think that the safety factor of driverless cars is amazing, because these cars have a 360-degree awareness of what is around them, and they can see further and predict better than we can. So I've seen footage of cars' accident detection going off before the driver realizes that there's an accident in front of them.
Oh, geez.
Wow. So I think that we are going to see cars move faster and cars move safer as a result of this technology.
That's incredible. So let's go back to what you said about policy, because I find that really interesting, especially here, since Rhode Island is well known for politics being a political sport. It's a sport here. Kind of what you said. Do you think in terms of when it comes to innovation, when it comes to automation, when it comes to driverless cars and that kind of thing, does it come to policymakers reaching out to people like yourself and to Brown University and to the initiative that you have going on to get in touch with you, to see, to get your insight, to get your knowledge, to see, where is the future going, what's happening here in our community? Is it up to policymakers to get in touch with this community rather than to be burned, like you said, with what happened with Uber and what happened to Lyft?
I think it's very important for policymakers to reach out to researchers and find out what is happening on the cutting edge, because what is happening on the cutting edge may be surprising compared to what you read in general news. So I'll give an example from artificial intelligence. There are a lot of people who are in research communities talking about the need to regulate artificial intelligence algorithms and the use of artificial intelligence algorithms in making major decisions in people's lives. And already artificial intelligence algorithms are used in sentencing, criminal sentencing. They're used in predictive crime, like recidivism rates. They're used in areas that have serious impact on people's lives, and most of those algorithms are proprietary black box algorithms. So people don't know how those algorithms work. And even scarier is that
it's intense.
sometimes, depending on how the algorithm is designed, the writer of the algorithm doesn't know how the algorithm is making a decision. So just to give, there's a thing in artificial intelligence called interrogable AI, okay?
Okay.
Or legibility in AI. And this is the practice of trying to write the algorithm so that the algorithm tells you what it's doing along the way in a way you can understand. And this is becoming more important in the research community because you have examples like this one. There was a group of researchers who wanted to tell the difference between dogs and wolves and had a very accurate algorithm that could tell them the difference between dogs and wolves. So they want to find out further, how was the algorithm doing this? It was something 90-something% accurate. And so they had it highlight the features in the picture that it was picking out to determine whether a dog was a dog or a wolf was a wolf. The features that it was selecting turned out to be snow in the background because of the data set. There was a bias in the data set that it was using, and the researchers had no idea about this bias until they asked the algorithm to point out the bias. So I actually
That's
think
slightly frightening.
there's a, especially when algorithms are being deployed in major life decisions, whether you get a job, whether you get insurance.
Yeah.
I think there's a big opportunity for legislators to demand the algorithm have interrogability. And I think it's up for legislators to talk to experts in AI to find out how to do this properly so that you don't stifle innovation, but you also have some accountability.
I like that. And just kind of as we wrap up within the next couple minutes or so, let's get kind of on track, talk to you a little bit about how we think automation will impact New Englanders and New England jobs. For the second straight month here in Rhode Island, we've seen a loss of jobs. Do you think that could be from automation, or do you think that automation will impact Rhode Islanders' jobs as we move forward, whether it be with self-driving cars or with trucks or whatever the case may be? Do you think that's going to make a big impact here in Rhode Island and in New England as we see innovation continue?
So I'm actually very hopeful for Southern New England. We have something very special going on here in artificial intelligence and robotics. We have a nexus forming that is similar to Silicon Valley. We have one of the highest concentrations in the world of robotics and artificial intelligence companies in this region producing this technology. Another thing which we have coming down the pipeline in the next 15 to 20 years is we have a graying population. So we have a lot of people who are retiring. And there's going to be a need for automation both in helping that graying population age gracefully, age in place, not have to go into nursing homes, not impose an economic burden, and also in replacing those jobs. So I'm actually very hopeful about this region being able to weather automation and artificial intelligence and robotics and actually emerge as a very strong player globally.
I actually like that answer. That makes me feel hopeful. Well, and I think as we look at as we look at automation and as we look at robotics, there's such a bright future when it comes to the medical field, when it comes to there's so much, but then you also have to look at the downside of people could lose their jobs, so I feel like there's a lot of anxiety involved around it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think it's just like any technology we've experienced. It's like the computer, it's like the cell phone. Back in the 70s, accountants used to do these things called spreadsheets that were big pieces of paper that you'd pay an accountant a lot of money to do a spreadsheet. And now spreadsheets are done by everybody everywhere.
Yeah, I have a Google spreadsheet up on my computer right now.
and it hasn't hurt the accounting industry. We've been able to adapt. This is the process of creative destruction. As jobs are destroyed, new jobs are also created. And we can't even really imagine what some of those jobs are going to be. But I foresee a lot of jobs being created helping artificial intelligences do things better. So right now, artificial intelligence is very narrow. We don't have something called a general AI. So we don't have an intelligence like ours. We have an intelligence that can do things like identify a picture. So there are going to be a lot of jobs for people working with artificial intelligence to do their jobs better, to do their jobs faster. And that's very exciting for me.
It's exciting for me too, exciting for the future. So Peter, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Before you go, I want to snap a picture, and I hope to continue this conversation with you as we move